right, welcome back. So what we're going to start doing is we're going to start learning about core data. So just to kind of emphasize what's the problem here. So the problem here, we worked on it last time, and that's if you make a change. So if you add a quote, so I'll just add Irma from old school. So create the quote and it's on there, right? But then if you stop the app and you play it again, you can see that that's gone, right? And so the idea is that your stuff will stay around in memory until it's kicked out of memory, right? So we talked about that last time, to where if other apps need resources, you'll get kicked out. Somebody turns their phone off, things like that. So what we want to start doing is we want to start fixing this issue. And the best way to fix it is with core data. So the way core data works is the first thing you have to have is you have to have a data model. Core data does a really nice job of doing things graphically, which I think is a really great way to kind of learn these things, and I just really like it a lot. So the first thing you have to do is you have to define your core data model. So you can see that there's a file that you get for free with the core data template, which is for the core data model objects. And what you do in here is you create entities. So you can actually just click on Add Entity. And so we're just going to go ahead and add an entity. We're going to name it MovieQuote. And then each entity has attributes. So you can click on plus here on the attributes. By the way, I'm on the table view. There's also a graphical view, which is fun, and I like the graphical view. But the table view is where you kind of like do the real work, right? So if I click on plus on the attributes here and I add a quote, I set its type to be string, and then I add another attribute. I'm going to call it movie, and I set its type to be string. That's going to be our basic movie quote. Eventually, we're going to add a little bit more to it so that we can sort it by time. But for now, we're going to stick with just movie and quote. And so, I think that this is really neat, that we've got this entity that's a model object. And so now we can start using entities of this type whenever we want to save things to core data. There's a lot of little details we'll learn about core data. One thing I do want to say is that it does use SQLite way under the hood, so it is still SQLite, but you don't even see it, right? That's an implementation detail that actually could be implemented other ways, but you do typically use SQLite. Just catching up the slides here. The other thing that I meant to do, and I forgot to do, is I actually kind of want to make a copy of this project. And the reason is that we're going to start making so many changes to it that we're just going to completely it's just going to be a different app by the time we're done with this core data things. So what I'd like for you to do is I'd like for you to just go ahead and kill Xcode just so you're not having Xcode up while you're making changes, and then go into Finder and just make a copy of your project. And then when you paste it in, you can rename it. So this is just kind of meant to be an archive. So it's going to say no core data yet, right? So I'll just put the word no right there. And the reason that this is nice is because that later we're going to come and we're going to do endpoints, and we're actually going to want to go back to that version, the no core data yet, and we're going to kind of take it in a different direction. All right, so there you go. I went ahead and made that copy. Probably didn't need to close Xcode, but it was easy to open back up. Admittedly, that no core data yet, it actually had the entity definition in it, but that'll be fine. Great, I'm going to go back to the slides and make sure there's nothing else I missed. So here we've created the entity. The next thing that we're going to do is we're going to kind of break the old version. And the old version used MovieQuote Swift file. So there was the Swift file here. We don't need it anymore. So go ahead and hit delete. So move to trash. So that kind of broke some things, right? So if you go into your view controllers, you can see that MovieQuotes doesn't exist and we've got a lot of errors. We're actually going to fix that problem by creating a class based on this entity. What these are called is they're called NSManagedObject Subclasses. The idea is each thing that comes out of core data is called a managed object. So it's managed, meaning that you can change it, you can modify it, but it's still connected to core data. So they're called managed objects. And we're going to make a custom managed object subclass. So what I want you to do is I want you to right click on the group and say new file. Go to iOS core data, and what we want to make is we want to make a new NSManagedObject subclass. That's exactly what we want. So what you can do here is you can look at your different data models. So obviously we only have one, so make sure that's checked. and then you can create a class based on an entity. So just go ahead and check mark the MovieQuote because that's the only one you've got. It's going to pop up to let you save it in a default location, and you get a choice for the language. You get a choice between Swift or Objective-C. It actually turns out that I'm going to leave it in Objective-C, and that's just because all of core data was written in Objective-C, so I'm just going to go ahead and leave it in Objective-C and make a bridging header. If you wanted to switch it to Swift, it would work, but there is a change that you'll have to make to the code that I just didn't want to go into. And to be honest, you're not going to modify this file, so leaving it in Objective-C is just fine, right? And I mean, to be honest, all of core data is really in Objective-C, so it's no problem making this file in Objective-C as well. It asked me about the bridging header, because yes, I do want the bridging header. And then you can see what it does is it creates kind of a crazy file. It creates a file where the interface makes sense, right? So it says, hey, there's two properties, a movie and a quote. So that's really all we needed. And then the implementation is going to be much shorter than you expect. At Dynamic, to be honest, I don't know the details of how this works, and I don't need to. It just kind of all works under the hood. It's a simple object. It doesn't have any methods on it. So it's pretty easy to use. It just has these two properties. If we want to use it in Swift, though, we do have to type in import MovieQuote.h into the bridge header. So this makes this class available to Swift. So it worked out well that we knew a lot about bridge headers, and we weren't intimidated by this at all. And you notice that this fixes up a lot of the problems, not all of the problems, but it fixes up a lot of the problems. The thing that it doesn't fix is it doesn't give you the same constructor. So we made a constructor that took a quote and a movie. And to be honest, the way that we're going to create objects in core data is going to be different anyway. So I'm just going to comment out that syntax error. And then there's another one down here where I created it to go into the array. Oh, it looks like I need to kill two lines actually. So I need to insert it and hide that one as well. So just by commenting out the creation process, it actually fixed the syntax errors. So you can actually run it now. It's not much fun because you can't create any. I mean, you know, you could have the box pop up and you could type stuff, but it's not going to actually create anything. It actually crashed on me because of my special case issue. I'm not worried about that at all. Great. So the main goal is we wanted to learn about making attributes on these things and creating the class. Let's say you made a change though. So let's say you realized, hey, I actually need another property. And in fact, we do need another property. I want to be able to sort these by when they were entered. So I'm actually going to add one more property. I'm going to call it the last touch date. And I'm going to make it a date property. Once you make a change to your data model, you have to actually regenerate those custom classes. So I'm actually just going to highlight them and say delete and move to trash. And then I'm just going to remake them. So I'm just going to say new file. And like it feels tedious to remake things, but it's really not very hard. And actually, anytime you change your data model, like it affects like your app in a lot of ways. So to be honest, it's the easiest part of doing a data migration of your data tables, right? So recreated those headers. That's great. It still compiles just the same. But now we've got 3 fields where last touch date time is going to be really useful to our order. So that's all we've got for this time. Obviously, for next time, we're going to have come up with some way to create quotes because it doesn't really do much yet. All right, see you next time.